How we doing, everybody? This is AJ Torres, calling straight courtesy of Undrafted Sports down the bottom. This is Brooklyn Bridge meets Bay Bridge from Bay Bridge Sports. All your Bay Area, that is your San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, and more. We got Maddux. How we doing
Hey
today,
guys,
man?
I'm Maddux. I'm doing pretty well. I started Baybridge Sports podcast on YouTube and Twitter. I tweet a lot more than I post on YouTube, but really excited to be here and ready to get talking some baseball.
Which, speaking of, let's go with a good segment here. Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the sticky stuff, but if you've noticed, everyone will tell you. Now, everyone was wondering about Kevin Gossman this year. Okay, will he accept the qualifying offer? And I think me and you discussed the saying, oh, he had to take that money.
Yeah,
He just
yeah,
had to. But if
he
you
had to
look
bet
at
on
it,
himself.
absolutely. And if you look at before and after the sticky stuff scandal, consistent and the best player in the Bay.
Yeah, he's had
Pitching
one rough
wise, he's the
start.
best guy in the Bay.
Yeah, exactly. He had one rough start after the sticky stuff, and it was right after the All-Star break, just recently. And he struggled in the first inning, but after he got settled in, man, he looked really damn good. If Jacob deGrom didn't exist, he would be the front runner for the Cy Young Award, and he's been a great surprise for the Giants. I mean, granted, had we known he was going to play this good, I think Farhan would have extended him for 3 years instead of offering the qualifying offer sheet. But I think he's due for a big extension at the end of the season.
Oh, absolutely. And it's impossible not to. And as far as I'm concerned, I got to go by innings pitched. And
Right.
the thing is with Jacob deGrom, and listen, I will say this even as a Yankee fan, he's the best pitcher in all baseball. My only concern is that every time that he has something go wrong, listen, we hope, just as baseball fans, that they're babying him. And some people are like, is this guy MVP, Cy Young, whatever the case may be? And I got to look at the innings at the end of it, because if Jacob deGrom, if this really is serious and he ends up missing 10 starts out of the year, I think Gossman is the front runner. But I mean, again, if Jake is going to throw, like, even if they give him like the extended rest, if they do like a 5-man rotation and they do an opener, let's say.
Right.
We'll see with the Mets, because it's different because of all those injuries, but we'll get with that later. So is it cut and clear and dry that the best Bay Area pitcher is Gossman, and it's not even close?
It's pretty clear, but I will say at the beginning of the season, I was really anxious for our starting rotation. I mean, aging Johnny Cueto,
Scary.
three relatively new pitchers if you include Gossman in that group, DeSclafani and Alex Wood. Aaron Sanchez was tried out at the beginning of the year, and he kind of got hurt, which, I mean, that's his career arc line. And then also, too, Logan Webb's young, and he's really proved himself this year. He's really impressed me. I think Logan Webb reminds me a lot of Matt Cain with his changeup and just his command of the strike zone. And the dude's got guts. A couple weeks ago, I was at a game he started, and it was his first start coming after injury, and he only threw 3 innings. And you couldn't tell he was coming off injury. I think he threw 3 shutout innings against the Nationals is who it was. And I think he had like 6 strikeouts.
It's a good lineup, too. Like, a lot of people are saying the Nets are not a good team. It's like, they're a good team, but they've been having some pitching issues.
Yeah, they just don't have the pitching.
It's like every time, like even that World Series run, you go to the bullpen, it's like, I mean, I can't imagine how many innings Scherzer's pitched, and he's just holding his breath in the dugout, trying not to explode on somebody. He goes, "Thanks for the lack of the wins, jerk."
Funny story about that. So we sat by the bullpen when we went, and I would say about half the bullpen spent the first 4 innings of the game flirting and looking at some girls in the stands. It was pretty hilarious. After every inning, after like they'd warm up, they would throw the ball out to them and like would wave at them and would be looking at them. It was pretty funny, and like they were not focused on playing the game.
I mean, it's just different, and there's a reason why I kind of say, like, they separate like the pitchers, and then it's just like, if you're in the bullpen versus like, hey, you're totally not pitching today because you need rest, you're in the dugout. I mean, it's a different culture out there, and they don't actually, they don't say
Right.
what goes on out there. as long as there's not another beer and wings incident, which I actually remember during that time, but yeah, like there's just so many things about the game. Now, listen, I'm not gonna condone them flirting or anything else, but it could always be worse because I'll say this: like, there's some guys where this is a controversial topic, especially if we were to
Right.
get Chris Correa in here, but there's some guys, right, that will say, "Don't golf during the season." Particularly if you're a good hitter, because they
Right.
say, "Hey, the arm extension, just different."
Well, so
As in,
with
like, hey, in the off season, golf all you want. After spring training, your hands extend different. Don't golf. And for
so
pitchers, with Josh Beckett, do you remember that one?
I don't actually.
He ended up having skipping the pitching rotation because of an injury. The next day they announced it. He was at a charity golf event and
Oh
he
gosh.
got ripped. He got
Of course.
torn a
Of
new one,
course. Of course.
and
And I mean,
that was the beginning of the end for him in Boston.
yeah, I mean, people are always going to complain about something, remember, right? Like,
Oh,
it's not
of
like
course.
it's not like he's a Harden or at a strip club or Lemon Pepper Lou, you know? I mean, granted, it's a different sport, but I mean, the dude's at a charity golf event. That's, I can live with that. Funny story about that actually is
It's not
in high school.
eating wings ain't physical though. Throwing dollar
Right.
bills ain't physical. It's
Yeah.
like, dude,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be injured and you're
Pitching.
golfing.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, you skip a start because you're okay. I can get behind that. Funny story though is in high school I hit left-handed for baseball, and so I would golf right-handed. So I mean
Oh,
I know a couple guys who do that. I don't know Giants. I don't know if he hits right-handed for golf, but Giants prospect Hunter Bishop is really big into golf, and he posts that on social media. He's always out there golfing out in Scottsdale,
I mean,
and
the best
he's
golf
supposed to
stories
be
I have
he's supposed
is
to be
with.
hurt right now too.
Oh God. Although speaking of golf, the worst case was Cespedes, and you heard what
Oh
happened
god,
with
yeah,
that story, right? What the
yeah,
actuality of it happened.
yeah.
The wild boar.
The wild boar.
Wait, you didn't hear about this one?
Wait, I
So,
thought that he went missing because he was.
well, here's the thing: he was injured, and the big
Mhm.
story was he owned a ranch in Florida. I'm not sure if he still does, but the original story was he got off his horse, basically landed in a pothole or some sort of ditch, and violently broke his ankle.
Oh my god,
That was the story. Guess what the actuality was?
he got hit by a wild boar.
He sidestepped the wild boar,
Oh
then
my
got
god.
caught in the ditch and broke his ankle. And mind you, right? There's certain things like, do you remember Danny Graves was a pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds at one point?
Yeah, I've heard of the name.
Well, I've actually saw an interview with him. This was on Facebook years ago, but I actually asked him if he was okay with Cespedes golfing when he was nowhere near 100%. And he goes, "There's a lot of crazy things that go in your contract." He said, "I was not allowed to play pickup basketball." Now, mind you,
Wow.
that actually got set in stone because if Aaron Boone didn't get hurt, A-Rod doesn't come to New York
Yeah, 100%.
because, it's early 2004. Aaron Boone plays pickup basketball, tears his ACL, puts Brian Cashman on a phone, he makes a move. But
I
he
think at
said,
that point though,
yeah,
at the place Major League Baseball was at that point, and how much A Rod was actually worth to the game, the only team on the planet that could afford to pay him what he was worth was the Yankees.
yes, but also the Texas Rangers and that horrible owner brought on
Oh
himself.
God, yeah.
He decided to pay him double what everybody else was making. But
They
going
couldn't afford it.
forward, yes, the team went bankrupt when they were going to the World Series back in 2010. I mean, for real.
Right.
But he said he wasn't allowed to own and operate a motorcycle, was not allowed to go out in the ocean.
Jesus.
Yeah, and the reason why they say don't go out in the ocean, right? What happens if that eliminates some extreme jet ski accident,
Right.
parasailing, cliff jumping? If you remember, do you remember Barry Zito's contract?
Yeah,
He
one of the
was
worst
not allowed
contracts in
to.
Giants history.
Correct, but guess what? A lot of people will sympathize him about. Guess what he was banned from doing?
What, golf?
His favorite hobby of surfing.
Oh wow.
He said it
Damn.
was. He said it was his therapy.
Well, he really developed his musical career towards the end there. played a lot of guitar as a player, and now he actually, the funny story is he now actually like has a band, and like I don't know if he's a band or a solo musician, but he does perform quite often.
Yeah, I've heard him. Country music. Yeah, good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and also too, speaking on contract injuries, I mean, you're talking to the guy who's watched Madison Bumgarner his whole life, and the quad
The
accident was
dirt
probably one of the
bike
most
incident,
dirt bike.
right?
Yeah, was one of the that was one of the more dough the pain moments for a Giants fan.
The pain.
Yeah.
We got to get that up on Undrafted, man, because
Oh,
I
100%.
mean the fact that I mean, dude, I can't believe the friend actually did it, and I just decided I'm like,
Shirtless.
dude, I'll make you a comfortable man, and I'll do it with you. And he went the Elton John Jr. and I just looked like I'm from freaking Jersey, but that was absolutely hysterical. And one
I
thing is
agree.
that he mentioned the last segment of the show. Do you remember years ago when Hanley Ramirez signed that? This was a contract bust, but Hanley Ramirez to the Red Sox, same
Yeah.
time as Pando went there as well.
Yeah.
Hanley Ramirez hasn't played one game in left field, but they
And they're
said,
throwing
"Oh,
up there.
it'll be Fenway Park. All you gotta do is pick up the ball and throw it to second base." They ranked him before the season as the number one left fielder in all
Oh,
baseball,
God. I remember
and that
that.
was a disaster. So
You're
this
talking
is
about
one for the
ESPN, though.
Fran.
Come on.
This was actually a few
Oh,
ranked,
really?
but my thing is right when they do lists for outfield, they just do general outfield. I actually like to do it by position
Yeah, I
because you're
agree.
not because if you're going to go offensive numbers, right? All the if we go by offensive production as far as power numbers, look at all the right fielders.
Or the
It's
DHs who play outfield once every 5 days.
exactly. It's like do me a favor, put a Verdugo in, his actual outfield position, and let's compare Aaron Judge, Mookie Betts, Hunter Renfroe. Those guys are right fielders. So for
Right.
left field, it seemed to be an offensive favorite category. They just put Hanley there. Now, what the Fran said is that he thinks that, I mean, if you look at Chris Bryant, he's paid 10 games at 5 different positions of corner outfield and every outfield position, first time done since 1904. If he decides to convert to center field, he would be the richest center fielder. And
Chris
obviously the
Bryant?
most, oh, the richest, absolutely. With what he wants, and if they put him in center
I don't
field,
know.
he would be the
I don't
richest.
know. There's this
I
guy named Mike Trout who plays down in Los Angeles that would have something to say about that.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
I don't know.
definitely Mike Trout's thrown in there. But I
I
mean,
personally,
I consider him a god, and I just kind of exempt him because it's like, okay, we got a
he's not
guy
even
who
real life.
he's not
He
even
doesn't
in
even
real
count.
life. Exactly, because he's been a Hall of Famer for years to come.
Oh, yeah.
He could have retired
Yeah.
4 years ago and have gotten in.
Well, I think personally, like as a Giants fan, KB is definitely one of the guys I would love us to target at the deadline. It's just that question is if he's going to be a extended guy. I'm not willing to trade our farm system for a guy who's going to be a rental.
So my thought is, if you remember, there was actually a time where even though David Price said he never wanted to be there, do you remember when David Price was being sold from the Tigers?
Yeah, when he got traded from there.
Yes. Before the Blue Jays swooped in, the Yankees actually had an offer on the table, but they said, you're signing an extension. It didn't work out. The
Yeah,
price
of
tag
course.
was, we're going to give you Luis Severino straight up, but you got to sign an extension. But it didn't happen, went to Toronto, and then the Red Sox signed him. And
It's a big
hey,
deal.
I mean, David Price actually says he goes, my kids were there, won a World Series there. He said it was one of the best times of his life. Humble dude. His interviews are great.
I think, and that's the thing with baseball now too, is I think it's going to start moving to more of that basketball culture of let me make as much money as I possibly can while I am playing. And you can't fault players for that. I mean, you shouldn't be agreeing to an extension because you're getting traded to the team. I mean,
Well, I mean,
that's
I'm not saying he had to extend. That was basically on him.
yeah,
Now,
right.
what
That's what I'm
my
talking
thing
about.
is what I mean by the NBA, right?
Mhm.
It kind of goes like this because his contract was formulated where it's just kind of like, hey, if baseball just boomed up and the max salary is like $50 million a year, it's like, hey, after 4 years, you can opt out of this deal and you could possibly sign the same amount of money, but instead of 3 years, it's five. But he
Right.
performed at such a bad level and then he opted out. So it's like he has to take the money. Now,
Yeah,
granted, he's
100%.
done great things, but if you look at it, did you know he's the most, before all the injuries, he was the most expensive relief pitcher in all baseball?
Yeah, I believe it.
$30 million starting in the bullpen. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
the
is he
Dodgers
even
can't
playing
have him
this year?
now. Yeah, he's playing for the Dodgers. He's been in the mixed role. He started out in the bullpen. I'd like a long arm for extra inning games, just so you don't burn out the bullpen. But with everything going on and Bauer on leave, I will not get into that. I mean, just with
I
all
mean,
the
while we're on
injuries
the
and
topic of
everything
the
else, they need Price
right,
in the rotation.
yeah, while we're on the topic of the Dodgers, I mean, what a week for the Giants.
You know,
Like,
as far
what
as
a
I'm
week, what a
concerned,
series.
yes. The problem that I'm having though is it kind of goes down to this. I said to a coworker of mine, they said, "Is there any chance of the Mets entering the playoffs?" I said they got to win a division. And he said, if they don't, what happens? I said they go home. The only field they're playing on is
Yeah.
the golf course, because
Yeah, all
I
three NOS
I
teams.
said it for over a month now. The two wild card spots in the division is between the Giants, Dodgers, and Padres. But if you've noticed something, right? Guess what happens if the Dodgers get the wild card spot? As in the Padres or the Giants win the division. Guess what happens?
They'll have home
You're
field for the
well, you're
they'll have
kind of going to be pissed off because if you look at how they've played against the Padres and Giants this year,
yeah, you're right.
it's been piss poor. So if I if I'm a Dodgers fan, it's like I gotta win a division or I'm in panic mode. It doesn't matter if you have Kershaw starting on the mound or Walker Bueller. Guess what? If you have
We
Clayton
know it won't be
Kershaw,
Bauer.
it probably won't. But if you
Yeah.
have Clayton Kershaw on the mound starting that game, you better have Walker Bueller ready to go,
Oh, yeah.
warming
I
up in the
mean,
third or fourth inning. Because as soon as he starts not having it, you gotta yank him right there. That's just a wild card game. It's just how it is.
I
Otherwise,
mean,
it's going to explode. The Dodgers have
I
been
mean,
killed. The Dodgers have been getting killed.
100%. And like realistically, this week, I mean, going 3-1 against them, we could really honestly be looking back at this in October is the series that won us the division. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It's
We
just
basically
close.
stole it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jansen's terrible. I mean, what about the Dodgers booing him both nights back to back? That's a dough the pain moment
You
right
know,
there.
the thing is, right? And I've talked to if I'm pretty sure you know who Bobby Crosby is, and you know Deep Left and
Yeah,
Moneyball Steve and all that. I've talked to
yeah.
Moneyball Steve on Instagram, and I know he's a controversial character, but there's times where he'll go on Instagram and he'll rant, and I'm like, Steve, talk to me. Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it mechanical? And
It's all of it.
you know what? At any given time, it comes in phases. At some point, it's injury. Then there's a mechanic tweak, and they mentally doesn't have it. And then there's like this rotation on the clock.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. I think my biggest issue is, well, of course I hate the Dodgers, but they had us 3 of the games. They could have easily gone 3-1, and the ball rolled our way because, I mean, I don't know. It's just a magical season right now. That's the best way to describe it as a Giants fan. It's just pure magic.
And I've actually been watching after our episode. I kind of kept track with the Giants and I kept track of the Padres with the guys at Friar Talk. If there's ever a collab on that episode, I wish I could actually just mediate. If
I
I
don't
had
know.
a,
I personally, for me, I respect the hell out of the Padres. I really like what they've done building their team. I think that's the way their team is built phenomenally. They just have had a ton of pitching issues, you know?
yes, and I think that some of the arm issues I think are going to bite them a little bit. Not so much Clevenger, that I have no idea what was going on about, but as far as the Nelson Lamet, I kind of think of it similar to Seth Lugo for the Mets. It's like, hey, if you're a starter and you can't convert to relief pitching, my thought is this: that I kind of go by the calendar theory. Okay, it's Monday. You are on plenty of rest. Can you pitch tonight? Okay, yes. Tuesday, can you pitch tomorrow? If you're a relief pitcher and you only pitched yesterday, you should be available tomorrow, unless there's like a 30 pitch count or something. I'm giving you a day
Yeah,
off. If a relief pitcher can't pitch 2 days in a row, it's hard. But then there's sometimes where Seth Lugo, it's like, okay, he'll pitch one inning and then he's not available for 3 or 4 days. It's like, dude, you can't do that.
right,
That,
100%.
that's where it's hard for the starters because they got to get into a certain routine. You have to go all in on your stuff for one inning, and then you got to do it again the next day. There's a lot of times where they only go like 90% and they eventually ramp it up towards the end. You got to, instead of having a whole day to prepare, you just play catch, you get warm, you get amped, you get adrenaline, and you go all out for one inning or about 20 pitches or so. Hard
Right.
adjustment. Not everybody can do it. We've seen a lot of people fail at doing it, but for those who can do it, Chad Green, Dylan Betanzas, Seth Lugo started to do it, but he's
Tyler
been
Rogers.
a bad year. Tyler Rogers, I like him. There's a lot of people that have been giving the Giants bullpen grief lately, but at the beginning of this year, I don't care if it was against the Diamondbacks or the Rockies. Guess what? There's been a lot of times since the Bochy era of the dynasty where the bullpen just hasn't been great. And everyone's like, oh, well, they need to add an arm, or hey, they need to make tweaks to this roster. You know what? If you look at that division, everybody in the National League West has bullpen issues. I remember when the Dodgers had like a $250 million payroll, and when Jensen was reliable, it was starter, Scary Bridge all the way to
Jensen.
Jensen.
Yeah. And also, too, I mean, speaking upon that, granted, the teams in the NL West do have had shaky bullpens, but I think out of everyone in the NL West, the Giants have had the best bullpen. We've had
I agree.
five or six really like epic, terrible blow-ups in late innings. And other than that, man, they've been solid. And also, like, really to speak on that, it's not just about the pitching late game. Get a load of this. 3 of the top 5 teams in runs scored in the last 3 innings of a game are all from the NL West. The Dodgers are 3rd, San Diego is 4th, and San Francisco is 5th. That's pretty crazy. And they're all tied. San Francisco and San Diego are tied.
Nice.
I mean,
Now, the big controversy was McGee or Rogers. My only problem with McGee, and Chad Green's got the same thing with the Mets, and the same thing with, I could say the same thing with Edwin Diaz, because there's times where you go out there and you're Edwin Diaz. The thing is, if you throw gas, you got to throw it.
right.
But there's some times where you'll see Edwin Diaz, he'll throw his slider, and it just sits there. There's no movement. It just
control
goes,
issues.
Wah. The problem is like you can have control issues and you could just miss your mark by a couple inches. There's a difference between when you completely have control issues and then when you can't grip or you can't fully break the pitch and it sits there and everyone just goes, mine.
Yep.
Look it up. See ya.
I don't know if you've seen if you watched the game, but a couple weeks ago they played the Royals, and it was extra innings, bases loaded. Diaz freaking drills Yelich in the hip. Hit by pitch, walking the go-ahead run. They ended up winning in the bottom of the 9th, or in the bottom of the 10th, but still, you can't be doing that.
Well, I mean, I actually said this with Michael Conforto. Outside of the 2 home runs he hit just last week, I said, listen, buddy, you're won $200 million. Scott Boras is your agent. People are wondering if you're going to be the next position player met for life outside of David Wright. And the reason why I say position players because they got to make Jacob deGrom a met for life. Let's just be honest.
Oh, yeah.
But The only thing you've done outside those 2 home runs last week was that walk-off hit by a pitch. If you want 200 million, you're going to have to do a lot more, buddy.
Yeah, I agree.
7 years for around like 200 million. Oh, forget about it. Okay, I couldn't do that if I'm Steve Cohen.
I'm really big on the Mets, honestly, for the rest of the season. If they end up holding on to that division, they could be a scary playoff team. I mean, you're talking about anytime DeGrom takes the mound, you're essentially guaranteed a win in the playoffs. You would have to chalk it up as a win. So, I mean, teams are already at an uphill battle against that. And I mean, it's not like the next 3 guys in the rotation are scrubs either. Stroman's very, very good.
Stroman is solid. Taijuan Walker. If you remember, I asked you about him, and I know you weren't sure, but my thought is this. If you look at Taijuan Walker, he's going to be the bargain of the offseason because he's quality. If you look at his career ERA, and someone is going to sign him for pennies on the dollar. 2 years, $20 million. That sounds like a contract that the Wilpons would give somebody. And there's everybody here, and then there's what the hell the Mets get because the Wilpons were cheap. But they decided to get Taijuan Walker for such a good contract that I don't know, man. You could almost sign him to an extension after this year. Just say, listen, we'll void out next year. Give me a 4-year deal for, $85 million or something like that. He's been that good.
And honestly,
and then the rest is injuries.
If you look at the best teams in the NL, the Giants, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mets, the Brewers, those teams of the world, like all of them have really deep benches and platoon really, really well. I mean, you look at the Mets, now that JD Davis is healthy, they've got Villar that can platoon places. And I mean, you already got Lindor, who, I mean, I think is a generational talent, but he just hasn't been.
He's been hurt. So about Lindor, and I'll throw in DJ LeMahieu in as well. After pitchers stopped it with the sticky stuff, they finally seemed to pick it around. DJ LeMahieu said he's been seeing pitches he's never seen before. It seemed like everyone had whatever stuff it was. And, I mean, Lindor just started getting it around. And the only thing that scares me is that every time a Met player gets hurt, it is a reason for concern. And when it's an oblique, we've seen how the Met injuries have been over the course of 20 years. The only thing that you do not want as a Met fan is that if he hits Port St. Lucie, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 years.
Right.
It is a scary thing to go. It's like if you say, hey, Lindor is rehabbing in Syracuse, you're like, thank God. You know what I mean? If it's Binghamton or Syracuse, you're fine. If he's at Port St. Lucie, you better say a prayer to the baseball gods. But with all the injuries going on, and I think Carrasco should be in the bullpen the rest of the year. I think Syndergaard.
He's a good story, though.
Syndergaard, yes, Carrasco is an amazing story. God bless him. Syndergaard, he can't throw inside. He's only got a fastball and slider on the outside corner of the plate. I understand that he's great, but consistently, third time through the order, personally, when he comes back, you got to put him in the bullpen. That's the best you can do. And I'm not sure how much money he's going to want, but
I don't know, man.
If he's going to want like $100 million, I can't pay that. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
I think this might he hasn't played since 2019.
Yeah.
I mean, and 2019 was a bad year for him, but you look at 2015, 2016, and 2018, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. He had a sub-3 ERA. He won 13 games, 14 games. Like that's a solid pitcher.
I get it. It's just that if
availability is the best quality.
But if we go by film and if we go by scouting report, it's all the same now. Everyone kind of figured him out. He throws gas. He throws a slider. He doesn't use his changeup much. He doesn't have a curveball. He's a 2-pitch pitcher, and he can't throw inside. So if you're going to have that kind of mentality, it's like, listen, if you want to go long arm, fine. But that to me sounds like a bullpen pitcher. And Luis Severino, I thought, was the same way at one point because he tried to gas everybody away. Everyone kept fouling him off. It's like, dude, it's the third inning and your pitch count's at like 65. going on to
Right.
75 after next at bat. It's like, we can't do this. He needs to
Apparently,
develop his slider, work on the changeup, and it was fine.
apparently he's throwing now, so that's pretty awesome.
Yes. But I mean,
I
with
mean,
especially with Thor coming back, they say a little after Labor Day, and if you're trying to make that playoff push right now, I mean, Rich Hill, I understand, could be like your spot starter or your
what a
sixth
trade
rotation
though.
man. Oh, absolutely.
That puts him in prime position to make a good
Yes.
playoff run.
Yes. I do think they need something else. Now, I don't think you're going to see a Trevor Story. I don't think you're going to see I mean, maybe a Chris Bryant, but the thing is, they're wondering that they're not going to sign with him, and they're thinking that JD Davis is going to crush it for
JD
the Cubs
Davis is a
for years to
stud.
come.
JD Davis is a stud. I would personally not move on from giving him his time in the sun, you know. I think that JD Davis, given a legitimate shot to play every day, could be one of the better third basemen in baseball. One of those late bloomers we were talking about earlier.
Yes, and it's funny when you talk about good third baseman, particularly with Nolan Arenado moving out of Coors Field. But I mean,
Right.
sometimes relocation is not the best. I'll give you a good example. Paul Goldschmidt went from MVP to good, not great.
Because he wasn't playing half of his games in the regular season in Arizona, and then another, what, 10 to it's 10 about in
10
Coors
to
Field.
15 games in Coors
In
Field.
Coors Field, and then Dodger Stadium. I mean, the NL West is kind of becoming a launching pad now with Oracle Park opening up the way it has with the new bullpens. I mean, the Giants have hit more home runs this season than they've had in a long time, and we're in July.
Absolutely. And I've been wondering about that too, because I know they deafened the ball as well.
But the way that they redid the bullpens, and also too something that hasn't really gotten talked about a lot is right field. And normally the arcade where they have in right field the Levi Landing, the brick wall. Normally underneath there is these archways that it's like a breezeway for the wind to blow in off the bay. Well, they put up I'm not sure if it was windows or a wall to block that wind from blowing in. So now the wind doesn't circulate as much in right field, and it carries a little bit more than it normally has. So now you're seeing left field being the area that gets blown the wind. It's super interesting the way that the wind has actually changed at Oracle Park.
Yes, and speaking of, I have been trying to get Covey Dave on the
Yeah.
podcast. It's just his schedule. There's always seemed to be something going on, but I do have his number. I got to hit him up sometime, and I'll never forget where, I think I was watching this real time as well. There was somebody in the kayak, and he had a sign. It was, grab some paddle, meet.
Yeah.
Just great.
Yeah. I mean, and also too, going back to the JD Davis talk, he's having a pretty solid year. Granted, he's been injured, but in the games he has played, he's been quite impressive, in my opinion.
Oh, yes, yes. So I guess from here, right? If you're, I mean, the Mets have already bought, but I think they need more. I think they need another solid pitcher, and I think they might need I mean, I'm just not sure who could cover the ground for Lindor. I'm not sure if they could use another bat per se.
I think you're going to see Villar play a lot of shortstop. Also, but I mean, you look at the way that their roster is constructed, and their 4-man outfield, it could be one of the best in baseball right now.
It's Nimmo, Conforto,
Pilar
and
and
who else are you
Smith.
referring to? Pilar, yes. Now, Dom Smith, that's an interesting one. I remember when Dom Smith, because I remember this is when everyone said, I want to call up Ahmed Rosario. I don't care if I waste his time. And we knew what happened from there. And then they
Right.
wanted to see if he could convert to center field. And listen, I have no idea what this trend is of putting middle infielders in center field. But if you look at the D. Gordon experiment, if you look at the Jurickson Profar, I kind of cringe at myself. I'm like, if you have a pitcher's friendly ballpark where there's a lot of ground to cover, I mean, think about it. Look at Oracle Park and look at the left and center field. Would you want to put a second baseman out there?
No.
Absolutely not. And there was a trend of things, and I'm like, get the hell
But
out of here. Stop this.
but speaking of second baseman that's getting thrown
Dom
out in the
Smith.
outfield,
Yep, go ahead.
Mauricio Dubon played a hell of a center field when he was up for us.
Hmm.
So I mean,
I'm just saying,
it's just
if you look at some of these guys, right? I'm just not a fan of it. I mean, just try to convert to center field like that. Like Dom Smith, when he got called up, because he was the second best prospect from Rosario at the time, he did come in. He did have his call up while overweight. He has not. I mean, he's worked on it, but he has never been a great outfielder. Listen,
nobody's been a good
the
hitter.
bat is good. He does play a better first base than Pete Alonso, and there was talk about it because of Pete Alonso's inconsistency during the COVID year. But I think everything's off the table because in 2 months, you don't have enough sample size. That's just it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I really do think, though, that the Mets are the best team in that division right now, especially with everything the Braves got going on.
It's still tough though. I mean, granted, I think it's them between them and the Braves. Yes, Acuna Jr. That one hurts, and the Phillies, they're going to have the worst bullpen in MLB history. They're going to have the worst bullpen in MLB history. I'm not going there, and I feel bad for Joe Girardi, and I feel bad for everybody in that starting rotation. And listen, Joe Girardi's strength was the bullpen, but here's the deal: he's tried every single goddamn trick in the book, and it has been a complete disgrace.
Look at what Gabe Kapler did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lost cause at this point. I mean, their bullpen issues.
Listen,
it's been going on for
shit about Gabe Kapler. And then, sure enough, Joe Girardi, they're like, yeah, let's go. He'll have the bullpen. Listen, it's not my fault that you could sign 3 guys right now, and they'll be the equivalent of what? It's still going to be a launch pad over in Philadelphia? Like, come on. These guys' ERA is between 6, 7, and 8. Like, this is just absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, one more injury to the Mets that's crucial, particularly to the rotation. The Braves are not quitting. Before they got Jock Peterson, their chances of making the playoffs were less than 10%. And they decided to give up a good first baseman prospect for Jock Peterson. Now, granted, I'm okay giving up prospects if you have some guy who's better in his way. In this case, you have Freddie Freeman, and a first baseman isn't really a versatile position. You can't just say, oh, yeah, take right field.
Right.
That's not one of those positions. So with that, right, the same thing with the Padres having a shortstop. It's like, well, we got Tatis at short. We have Cronenworth at second. Manny signed at third. It's like, hey, guess what? You're going to see a middle infielder playing outfield, or he's going to be traded for pitching. That's why I told Matt and the guys at Friar Talk, be like, hey, guess what? You're not having another second baseman play left field in that big ballpark. You might as well trade him for starting pitching and thank me later.
Piggybacking on that, and trading prospects when you got guys blocking, look at what the Giants got at catcher right now. Buster Posey's having one of the best seasons of his career.
Yes, absolutely. And I can't believe that he bounced back like this. It's surreal. It's a catcher. Usually catchers don't bounce back. You look at all of them.
He took a year off to get his hips right.
Yes, and whatever. Listen, I don't care what he did. I don't care if it's avocado ice cream. I don't care if it's some sort of yoga pose he does. I don't care what it is. The fact that he was voted in as an all-star is just brilliant. This is something that hasn't been – this is something that's huge. It's great for baseball, and it just shows you that if you're a catcher and your legs are sore, your whole lower body feels like a giant bags of concrete. Guess what? Just Buster Posey showed the world and showed everybody, listen, this is how it gets done. And this – I don't remember when there was a catcher that bounced back like this. Posada couldn't do it. Maurer couldn't do it. This
is the second time in his career he's had to bounce back like this, though. I mean, the horrific injury. But where I was kind of going with this is
Posey rule, yes.
Well, where I was kind of going with this is who's right behind him in AAA right now?
Isn't it Joey Bart?
Yeah. Do you know what we could get for Joey Bart right now if we traded him? I have not seen a
Question.
lot. I have not seen
And
any talks about trading
we
him.
thought Buster Posey. We thought that he was going to have his option
Yep.
bought out with Johnny Cueto, and Joey Bart slips in. But we can't do that now. He's going to have to. They're going
Buster's
to
going
have
to get
to
an
buy that
extension.
option.
Buster Posey will get an extension. He will play another 2 years in San Francisco. He has to.
I think they're going to pick up his option. I think
Yeah,
that's what's going
100%.
to happen.
And they'll
I
sign him
thought it
to
was
an
going to be
extension
a
after that.
buyout for like $3 or $5 million, something like that. Cueto, I think, is going to get bought out.
Yeah, Cueto's gone after this year. I hope so at least. But I think I have not seen a whole lot about a buzz about us willing to trade Bart at the deadline. But I think right now, just the way he's got to be frustrated sitting in AAA. I mean, he's hitting like 350 in AAA, and I think he leads PCL and home runs. I think
As a catcher, you need to belong on a major league roster because I understand the difference in play. But if you're telling me that a catcher can't bat 270 at the major league level, and mind you, a lot of people say that's generous, but I think it's just, the gap. Sticky stuff or not, I just think that's a gap. I think that's realistic expectations. That's getting hot, getting a slump. That's for a year. I think that's very decent for a catcher. If you
realistically
look
though,
at
I
what he
see.
can do, I mean, who is you dealing for? What upgrade position do you want?
I want a starting pitcher. I'm looking at guys. I wouldn't give up Bart for this guy, but I would trade back in guys in our prospect, like kind of like an Alexander Canario or even like our pitching prospects, kind of like a Gregory, even though he's suspended, a Nick Swinney, Logan Wyatt for Zach Davies out of Chicago. Granted, Zach Davies has a 4 ERA this year, but if he has the stuff to fit what our pitching coach is like, he's a sinker guy. I would really enjoy us trading for Zach Davies, just like one of those under the radar back end starters. I think that's what would take us over the edge.
I
And
think
then
a
two,
sinker ball in that ballpark would fit very well. So I'm actually in favor of that one. As far as everybody else, I'm not talking top prospects, but I think Kyle Gibson could potentially go if the price is right. I don't know. Again, I think this would be smaller chips, but I think Kyle Gibson could fit in there.
if we're pushing the big chips in, and we're actually, I think you have to at least consider it to trade Bart. I mean, there's a clogjam at catcher. We got Patrick Bailey right behind him. We have a really big emerging prospect right now out of Venezuela that no one has really been talking about. He got actually promoted recently from San Jose. I watched him play at San Jose. He's up in Eugene now. His name's Ricardo Genovez, and this dude's got power. He is built, his legs are massive, and he's young. We have a clogjam at catcher. I think I love Joey Bart, and I think he's going to be a generational talent at the catcher position. But I think right now, the way that the Giants are constructed, and Buster having at least 2 more years in a Giants uniform, I think we should at least consider trading Joey Bart for a Chris Bryant with an extension. A Starling Marte would not be too bad, even though I've heard he's kind of untouchable. I mean, there's a lot of options out
I
there,
just heard that the price is high on Marte. Now,
which a
I
Joey Bart would be acceptable for that.
yes. Now, if I had to go with Starlin Marte, now again, do I think he's good? Yes. I'm just concerned about the years on Marte, but I think in comparison, if we had to go by the big contract price, like for Chris Bryant, I think it's 300 and change. I'm thinking it's Bryce Harper money.
We
For
will have
Javi,
the money
like
though.
200 million. Well, the thing is, the Giants made a run at Bryce Harper, and they've made a run at a lot of top free agents, and there's a couple guys coming off the books. I think Starlin Marte, it's just so hard because of the market. I mean, AJ Pollock basically set the market, unfortunately. But I mean, if the Giants said 4 years, 80, that's probably the money. Unfortunately, I mean, would you be okay with that?
For a guy like Marte, yeah, I actually would be. But also too, thinking back about it, like with KB, I personally like now that I think about it more, I wouldn't give up a top prospect for him because we realistically could be in the running to sign him next offseason. Why give up prospects for a guy you can just sign next offseason? We're not ring chasing. We're still technically in the middle of our rebuild. Our best prospects are
Well,
on the way.
if you get lucky this year, I mean, there's some guys that want to follow through the process, and some guys go with this. Now, if we go with the four teams in the Brooklyn Bridge area and the Bay Bridge area, we have the Yankees, the Mets, the Giants, and the Oakland A's. I think we could all say that they're buyers.
Yeah,
So
realistically right now.
So if we go by all four teams, now we've mentioned the Mets, so we'll go with the A's this time around. Buyers, what do you think they need? And I mean, obviously the prospects are drained, but what do you think that their needs are? And do you think
So
that they will actually make a move?
Um, the A's are just such a weird team to kind of predict what they're gonna do because just of how small their market is. And I mean, we've seen them be somewhat of buyers in the past, but most deadlines end in them being sellers. Um, Not a lot of people are talking about this. The Mariners are above 500, and they're I want to say they're 5 games back of first. So we could realistically see them be buyers. And I mean, they're 4 games back of the A's. The A's are in second, and they're 7 back of the Astros, which I mean that's in running distance to make the playoffs. So we could see 3 teams in the AL West, in addition to the NL West, be buyers. But going back to the A's, I don't know. It's just very hard to predict what they're going to do. Middle infield's definitely a question there. Also, too, if you're looking at the A's, you got to understand they don't have the assets necessarily to go get a big name.
But also, we've talked about how if there's a big name and there's a chance that he's gone no matter what. Now, one team always ruins it, unfortunately. But I remember when Manny Machado was traded for 5 prospects, and
Right.
the Dodgers had no intention of re-sign him at all. No interest in signing anything close to what he wanted. They're like, "Hey, I think I want 200 to 300 million." They said, "We don't care. You're not coming back next year, but let's just win this year." And well,
Yeah. Right.
they lost in the big game, and he was the last out. But
I mean,
still,
taking a peek at the A's roster, I think right field has to be a question there. Piscotty's hitting under 200. Right field's a huge question mark there, and what necessarily not a ton of right fielders on the market right now.
now the question being is, who could you convert to right field? As in, is there an outfielder who they could
Right.
say, "Hey, man, I need you to play right field"? I remember Hunter Renfroe. I believe he played a good amount of left, but if you look at him, right? Because if you look at statistically this year at the new statistic, he has the second best outfield arm in all of baseball. He
Right.
is the red light. And if you look at the way he's been hidden, that was another bargain buy for the Boston Red Sox. He made the Tampa Bay Rays look like schmucks, and they could
Right.
use his bat this year. That thing that they're doing with Nelson Cruz, guess what? That should have been Hunter Renfroe.
Right.
No mistake about it. There's no doubt in their mind, and the Rays fans were pissed
Well, I
because
think
you're
also,
paying Nelson Cruz more than what you could have paid Hunter Renfroe the whole year.
yeah, I would agree with that. But also, too, you look at the A's. Nelson Cruz was one of their guys who were taking a peek at.
But if you look
So
at the price that they got back, the Twins basically fleeced it. It's like, listen, you have no idea what's going to happen with Nelson Cruz. He's in that kind of spot in his career where he's like Tom Brady, where yes, this guy is good, but you don't know when something is going to give, and you have no idea when the difference is going to between glory and the retirement home.
right. I think
That is the risky pick.
right, and I think with the A's, I don't think they're going to make a big splash, but I think they will get a couple guys. One guy that I really think would fit what they're trying to do is Darren O'Day. He would fit very well in the middle of their
The only
bullpen.
problem with Darren O'Day, and I know that is the Yankees. First off, they would never sell the relief pitching at this point in time because they ain't everybody they can get, for one. And number two, from all the reports going out, the arm issues of Darren O'Day, and he is up there in age, it seems like he's going to be out for quite some time. So that would be my argument there. And everyone could always use an arm. Let's see. I had some guys. I got a list somewhere. Oh man, might even be the wrong notepad. Shows you how much I know.
Also, too, Dan Winkler
notepad.
would be a good spot for them.
Very true. Very true.
I don't know. The A's, there's just not a ton of outfielders in the market, so they're kind of they're handcuffed with what they got right now, which is fine. I mean, that's just ultimately what it's going to come down to. They do have some solid bench bats. I mean, they're not a terrible team.
So, as far as I'm concerned, right, this also depends on who goes. Now, as far as relief pitchers go, we got Craig Kimbrell. They're out of that. Couple of interesting names. I got Richard Rodriguez going to the Red Sox because I think the Red Sox are just going to be like, listen, we got a lot of middle relief prospects. Pittsburgh, here's two. Hand over Rich Rod.
Right.
And if you have that guy as your setup man, your seventh inning guy, oh, that's scary.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, Otto, Rich Rod, and then Barnes. Yeah, that's solid. But we got Daniel Hudson, Ian Kennedy, and Hakeem Soria.
Yeah, I mean
the Diamondbacks got to sell everybody they can. And that's a team where, listen, they are not young. The farm system is only 9th. So they don't have a ton of prospects coming. They're not a young team. They got bad contracts. It's a mess over there.
I think that the Diamondbacks do have a very good farm system. Just looking at they're definitely top heavy, but I think the top of that is very cream of the crop.
I just don't trust the upper management because they never seem to go with a plan. Because if you remember, this is the team that unloads Zach Greinke to the Astros because they didn't want to pay his contract. Fun fact, did you know that right now they're paying him $10.3 million to play against him? And what did they do the year after they unloaded Zach Greinke to the Astros and said, here, guess who they paid?
Bumgarner.
Yep, your boy. And let me tell you something.
To a terrible contract.
Outside of that, 7-inning doubleheader game, he has been. I'm sorry to say this. He's been crappy. And let me tell you something. This was the team that everyone said, listen, we think that he's going to be at the deadline. And the reason why they cherished him is because in the modern era, he has been, like, we're talking this century, he's been the best postseason pitcher.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially that game against the Royals where he was just a phenom. There's not too many guys you'd want Game 7 as far as this century goes. But the only names you could really think of have been, it's been limited. Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson, Andy Pettit, and then you have Madison Bumgarner.
He's far from that guy, though.
After that year, he's nowhere close and he never will be. But once again, this is also the same team that gave the house away for Shelby Miller, and then he was never the same again.
Dansby Swanson, and he's been a solid shortstop.
Offensively, I think he definitely picked it up. There was concerns there, but just if you look at the structure, if you look at the leadership, if you look at the game plan, listen, it's a decent city. It's a medium market. I don't care what anyone says. There's a lot of mixed reviews on the ballpark, but I think it's good. I don't think it should be that low as far as it good. The uniforms are inconsistent. That's a bothersome thing to me, but they keep – because I remember the ugly purple and pinstripes. I remember the black and the red.
That was in the early 2000s.
I remember what they do, like the blue, gold, and red or whatever.
The gold, the full gold. Mm-hmm. Those were cool. I don't know.
The MLB edition ones they did this year, I really like them. But the problem being is just I feel like every time that they change their uniform, they have a different plan, but somehow somebody ends up screwing it up.
Their problem is they've had really good rosters in the past. I mean, granted, this team
Yes.
last year, I mean, they're not far removed from a good team. They just have never had pitching. They've never had the pitching that has allowed them to go deep in the playoffs. And then when you refuse to pay that pitching, now that's that's where you get your problems, where you end up in last place with 35 wins in July.
Jeez. I mean, again, it's terrible. A fine city. It's not like the way that Charles Barkley describes it. You know, the Phoenix Suns, where he goes, "Oh, don't worry, there's plenty parking."
And also too, like while we're speaking on teams management, I'm writing an article about that coming up soon. But I think it's time we start giving Farhan Zaidi his roses while he's here. And that guy is one of the best baseball minds in the entire planet.
Which guy again?
Farhan Zaidi, the Giants' president of baseball operations.
Yes.
He worked under Billy Beane Moneyball years, and then he went over to the Dodgers, and he was their GM, and he's the one that essentially constructed their fantastic farm system that's still fantastic to this day because of him, as well as turned them into World Series contenders. And the roster he set up is the one that won the World Series. I mean, you're talking about a guy who discovered Max Muncy, who discovered Chris Taylor, two guys that got off waivers that were career-minded, Justin Turner.
Well, the Justin Turner, I will just say this. There's a lot of Met fans that will just say, listen, if you want misery, I remember when Justin Turner didn't have the beard going on.
Well, I mean, I just think it's more of the true genius behind Farhan Zaidi and this ability to find guys that are just so undervalued and just discarded. I mean, you look at DeSclafani for the Giants, discarded. Gossman, discarded. Alex Wood, discarded. Lamont Wade Jr., discarded. Waiver guy. More recently from the Yankees, he's been killing it for us. Thairo Estrada, dumped. Mike Yastrzemski, dumped. These are all guys that are
also. You forgot Mike Tauchman, but listen, I'll just say this: Mike Tauchman, as far as that goes, he was never. He only had 1 year, and he wasn't offensively good. He needs consistent playing time to get where he wants to be, and he is a decent bat, but he's known for his defense, and that's where he shines.
And he's injured right now, but I don't see him being on our postseason roster personally. We just need to have that bat, and I would much rather have like an Austin Slater or Steven Duggar over him. But I mean, I just want to say like it's time to start like giving Farhan his credit where it's due. He's constructed. I mean, he by just pure. I don't know if it's just luck or just absolutely insanity. Like he's just been a magic man, finding these guys off of waivers and turning them into everyday players that are playing very well.
And speaking of the roster construction, here's a good one. And this guy, he is good enough to have possibly his number retired this year. Where do you rank Brandon Crawford among shortstops?
Personally, I think he's right after Tatis in the NL. But you always the one guy that just never gets talked about that is so good at baseball and should get his recognition over Crawford is Trey Turner from the Nationals. I think right now you got to go in the NL. You got to go Tatis, Turner, Crawford. I don't think Javi Baez is as good as Crawford this year. I don't know. This entire season,
I agree. So if I had to rank my shortstops, depending on who's hot and if he's injured or not, if we're gonna say Tatis is the best, I'm gonna put Bogarts at number 2.
Okay, I was just
And
talking about NL, but yeah, I agree.
yep, I'm talking just all of baseball. I would go Bogarts number 2, and the way that he's played, and this is again another seems like resurrection like Posey. Brian Crawford to me has been number 3. No
Yeah, I mean,
question in my mind, and it pains me that they haven't talked to him about an extension. Even I think they'll give him the qualifying offer, and we'll see. But
he's like a Buster
yeah,
kind of situation. He'll play another 2 years with us, I think. But the guy that I actually do think is going to go is going to be Brennan Belt, and he'll sign with someone like the Rangers, the Astros, the Yankees, and he'll go to somewhere that's a launching pad in right field, and he'll just pull the ball out of the ballpark.
actually, I'm not sure. If you remember, there was a former Giant that was signed to be a Yankee, but it was actually denied and it didn't go through because he wouldn't shave his beard. It was Brian Wilson.
Yeah.
So there are
Then he went to
some
the
guys
Dodgers.
that, yes, and he does. There are some rejections, and there are some things about the beard. David Price, he goes, "I'm keeping the beard, man." But I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Aaron
if the
Judge,
Yankees are going to pay him
Julio,
15,
they
20
did
million a
that.
year.
The only problem I think that goes on, and it's very obvious, is that the luxury cap, Hal Steinbrenner does treat it like it's an actual, ceiling, as in, hey, I can't build past the ceiling. It doesn't matter if it's the best starting pitcher that we think could be great for 4 or 5 years. I mean, this is going to the point where it's like, hey, didn't sign Patrick Corbin. And it got to the point where basically Brian Cashman put him against the wall and he goes, dude, it's been about 10 years. He needs to sign a number 1 goddamn starting pitcher. He hadn't done since 2009. And then boom, Garrett Cole. He had permission.
Right. I mean, like, it's just really hard because the Yankees are the team that like realistically has the money to spend on
They
anything. They you
they
know what I'm saying?
do, but they don't. And Hal keeps Brian Cashman on a tight leash. We do have to figure out what Luke Voigt is going on. And there's those injury things there, but I just don't see Brandon Belt in the budget. That's the only thing.
True. And I mean, just looking at in the early 2000s and going into the later part of the 2000s era, when the Yankees checkbook was basically unlimited at that point,
Seeing
they've
that way.
they've tightened up their money, and look what happened. A World Series drought. I mean,
Well, but also different ownership. You see, there was
right.
the boss really kind of took a back seat. I want to say 2007, 2008. The boss unfortunately passed away 2010, 2011. But it just seems since then, where the early 2010s, there was we don't want to, it's like, hey, we're far away. I don't need to sign 3 guys to go over the luxury tax, so do nothing, do nothing, do nothing. If you remember, there was the Kelly Johnson contract, then trade for Stephen Drew, and then
Even
that
Drew.
guy. It's just that of all the guys, empty farm system, not a lot of guys that want to sign, and on a budget. What happened? You paid a guy named Stephen Drew. Mind you, I think Scott Boras ruined his playing career because if
Yeah.
not, guess what would have happened? If he was more reasonable, he would have been on the New York Mets. And could you imagine the New York Mets? Because shortstop was a poor position for them for those couple of years. Imagine Stephen Drew that never missed a beat,
Right.
left-handed on that 2015 World Series team. It's a better series. That's all I'm saying. It's a better
Yeah,
series and a better year for him. But they
for
paid
me,
him
like,
$5 million to hit 200 all year, and you're like, oh, but the defense is valuable. You look at it now and look at the defense.
yeah,
I'm not saying Gleyber Torres isn't a shortstop because you put him at second base for years. You had
right.
Didi, you had DJ, you switched them all over the place. In the farm
What a
system, you told him to
shame.
play third. It's like you never gave the guy consistency to stay 1 year at one goddamn position. And what do? You throw him to the wolf, you throw him out of the bus, and you expect him to be just okay with it. You're lucky this isn't the NBA. Otherwise, he'd be traded somewhere and you'd be crying yourself to sleep every night.
What a shame they let Didi walk though. Like that what a shame.
I love Didi. I own his jersey. He's a gift to baseball. He is a tremendous human being.
He's a good player.
If you look at what he did in Yankee Stadium, but here is the thing. You had Gio, you had Glaber, you had DJ, you had Luke Voigt, and they said, where is that extra guy? And I was not a fan of Giancarlo Stanton coming to New York because this is the thing. And you're going to say this to yourself because I think the National League will have the DH by next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where the game should go.
I agree. So I'll just say this. When the Giants get a DH, or when they go to an American ball club and they play the DH rules, the DH is not a position. It's a versatility. You see, I'll just say this. I love Buster Posey's bat. If the National League has a DH, how does this sound to you? Buster Posey has, he's going to have one day off. It's most likely Sunday. But midway through the week on like a Wednesday, he has a DH.
He's been getting 2 days. He's been getting 2 to 3 days off a week, actually.
So if he gets like Sunday off and he gets Tuesday off, how about you start him Wednesday at DH, then Thursday, Friday, back in the shin guards and the helmet.
That is too another argument.
The fact that you get these bats in, right? Because these catchers that can hit, JT Realmuto, Gary Sanchez, give the guy a DH day. Give guys a half a day. No. What happens is you put in these guys, and some of them make a lot of money and have big contracts. Right now, Giancarlo Stanton is doing nothing but clogging up the DH spot. You're telling me Aaron Judge can't have that day? You're telling me Didi Gregorius, you're telling me Gio Urshela, you're telling me a guy is just like, listen, work a half day today. That's all I'm asking. We can't do that because we have Giancarlo Stanton making too much money holding us hostage.
Right. And dumb. also too, like going back to Buster Posey DHing, that's another reason why I think that the Giants may hold on to Bart instead of trading him, is that eventually he could be the DH kind of guy.
And if you think about it, right, if you rotate Buster Posey and Joey Bart because, DH day and catching, and, you're going to have to give the guy a full day or two off, but that could really work for the Giants. Because if Buster Posey just kind of goes through half the year and he goes, it's not like what it used to be, you still have his bat in the lineup. Right. Not liability behind catcher.
I think the value in Buster comes from his defense too. Granted, he is a 330 hitter right now with a lot of bombs, but I think the most value comes out of his defense. He's the premier defensive catcher in Major League Baseball right now, and it's not talked about a lot. I mean, teams don't run on him. He blocks balls. He is the cream of the crop.
And the arm hasn't diminished, which a lot of older catchers has. Yeah, between him and Molina, they've just been solid. The arm has not diminished. Like Jorge Posada, his arm went away and he had to go to DH.
Yeah, good old Jorge.
Love him, man. Love him. It's funny because not a lot of people know this, but there's a lot of guys that ask me from Undrafted. They're like, dude, how the hell did you become a Yankees fan? And what happened is my cousin who used to live 4 houses down, I don't remember when he was diagnosed, but he had leukemia, and this is the late 90s or early 2000s, but Derek Jeter did visit him in the hospital. We don't remember anything of this, but we just know that it happened. And sure enough, we've spent a lot of Sunday mornings and watched a lot of day games just hearing Michael K. behind the microphone, just looking up, see ya, old Yankee Stadium, a good home run cry. It didn't matter if it was Gary Sheffield, Hideki Matsui, Johnny Damon, Derek Jeter, Jason Giambi. It was just that is our childhood. That echoes in our ears. And that is how I became a Yankee fan. It wasn't the camaraderie. I mean, yes, the pinstripes are amazing, and there's a lot of culture behind them. But if you just look at the culture of the early 2000s, because we don't remember that much of the dynasty, that is our childhood, and that's how we started to love the game.
Right. Like for me and you both, talking about the broadcasters. I mean, we've both had probably the same broadcasters our entire lives that we've seen. With the Giants, Kruk and Kipe have been doing it since I was a kid. So I mean,
Yes. Also, what got me into them is the game that we played as kids was MVP Baseball
yeah,
2004. And sure enough, they do the commentary for all of them. And just be like, well, you know, he's got a big strikeout streak coming out here, Kipe. Wake up, me! It was just great.
yeah, and also too,
I love it. I do.
Also, too, I have seen some rumors about Judge actually being on the trade block. I wanted to get your thoughts on the podcast about what you think of the fan-sided trade that got put out a couple weeks ago, where the Giants would get Judge and the Yankees would get Yastrzemski, Heliot Ramos, outfield prospect, our number 3 guy, Sean Jelly, a right-handed pitcher. He's 6'11". He's our number 11 prospect. And then shortstop, second baseman, Will Wilson that we got from the Angels. He's our number 12 prospect.
Now, I actually think if it was Will Wilson, Joey Bart, and Yastrzemski for Judge, I actually think an offer like that, I mean, it's one of those where you have to go by value in the big picture. Everybody knows there's a guy that you love, but when the offer is too handsome, you have to go for it. And this is kind of like the Athletics that one year where the Athletics blew them out in the wild card game. They got they got John Lester, and they said, "Hey, Cespedes, go over there."
Right.
But I mean, you know, it was just what they had to do. As far as Aaron Judge and what he does for that team, now I think every baseball team should have a captain. And in recent years, I would say this: Evan Longoria should have been captain of the Rays. Brett Gardner should have been captain of the Yankees, and then hand it over to Aaron Judge. Posey, I think I'm not sure how many captains are in the game right now, but I can't think of a better captain than Buster Posey on the Giants. Same thing with Adam Wainwright on the Cardinals or Molina.
Yeah,
It's
when Buster's healthy, his leadership is what really guides the team,
even when
and the
he's
pitching
in the
staff.
dugout, yeah.
Yeah.
It just comes to what does a guy do for your franchise, and it goes beyond selling, you know, his number on the back of a jersey or a T-shirt. It goes
Or
down
some
to
tickets.
yes. But if you look at Aaron Judge, what he's done for the city, what he's done for fans, the way he carries himself, the way that he plays when healthy, he is the ideal Yankee that I've always imagined as a kid. Just the
Yeah.
way that he speaks, the way that he laughs, the way that he's fun.
The way he plays hard.
Yes.
That's why I like him.
And mind you, the last Yankee game I went to was actually a very interesting one. That was the game Aaron Judge broke his rib. That was CC Sabathia's last start in Major League Baseball, and that was the last game before Domingo Germán's suspension.
Oh my god.
And it was
firsts.
against the Angels. Trout hurt, Ohtani hurt. I was bummed. And my sister was bummed that Higgy was behind the plate and not Gary Sanchez. Aaron Judge did hit a home run to us, and I'll remember that there's this cardboard cutout of a kid, and he goes, "Aaron Judge, it's my 10th birthday," and he made sure that sometime during the game he got a ball.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because he would soft toss with somebody that's just came out from the dugout, and he would just walk over and he would just flick balls to somebody every inning. It was great.
Judge is a great, and there's also the video of him playing catch with the kid before a game one time. I don't know. Judge is a great guy, and
he does that, man. If I think of those guys that just carry themselves well, they're just proud. I mean, if you look at them, the way that they carry themselves on the field, off the field, play hard. guys that kind of just have a soft spot in my heart. I think of Aaron Judge, and I think of D. Gregorius, and I think of Brett Gardner. Like those are the guys that just kind of fit the mold, and it's just like
Two of them are gone.
you love
Time
them.
for the third one. Time for the third one to head out.
Uh, if Aaron Judge did become a Giant, I would be very happy that he would go home in California.
Yeah.
I know that he came from adopted parents, and I also know that he was originally drafted as an Oakland A. So
And
that'd
he's
be
a
very,
Northern California kid, too.
yes, went to Fresno, but would that be pretty painful for Oakland to be like, wow, this dude's a Giant now?
It's going to be worse when you see him in the World Series if that happens.
Absolutely. I mean, if Aaron Judge gets to become the right fielder every day for the Giants, that would just be, I mean, I think they would be the favorite. It
And
really
like
would.
honestly too, if you're looking at return on investment, right now would be the best time to trade Aaron Judge.
Yes, and the pieces that come back, if you think about it, right?
They're
There's
franchise
there's a guy
changing.
to give there's a guy that gives Glaber Torres competition because I think DJ LeMahieu is going to be staying in the middle infield for quite a while. I do not like Rougned Odor. He does like one game that saves his job for every 10 days. I'm sorry to say it, but that's just how I feel. But Gio's a lock at third. We DJ's going to be between second and first base, depending on Luke Voigt. And if you do have Joey Bart in that deal, I'm sorry, but sounds like Gary Sanchez regroups
Goodbye.
in our city, and you got Higgy behind the plate, but Joey Bart's gonna be starting. And then Yastrzemski in right field, I think he's gonna get comfortable because,
You know
as
how
you
big
know,
that would be? You know that would be how big that would be for Joey Bart to be the guy behind the plate in the Big Apple?
just
Like
yeah, in the
in the
bronze and the
pinstripes?
pinstripes. Oh yeah, and Yastrzemski, even though his grandfather's gonna cringe a little bit,
That'd be a
I
good story
I think
though.
it's gonna be
And don't get me wrong, I love
uh
Yastrzemski, and I'd be very sad to see him leave. But I mean, to get a guy like Judge back, you have to do it if it's on the table.
you have to. So, but again, I think Yastrzemski would just love right field there because of the porch.
He'd hit 40 home runs a season.
So I guess we'll top it off at this. I'm going to ask you both teams. I'm going to go with the Oakland A's first, and then I'm going to go on your Giants. What is the floor and the ceiling for both? I'm going to go with Oakland. It sounds cliche, but the wild card round is the might be the ceiling for them because we know what history says.
I agree too. Yeah,
The
they
floor
don't.
just missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the floor for them is they get caught by the Mariners. The Mariners either make a splash and they go get someone big, and they can close the gap there and make a wild card spot. That's the floor for them. And I would say this. I would agree. The ceiling's a wild card game loss. I just they don't have. I mean, Sean Manaea is a great pitcher. Don't get me
History
wrong.
says the wild card game is their kryptonite. Now, I heard that MLB next year is going to be doing 6 teams instead of 5, and there being a wild card game. I'm hearing we're going to have 3 series. The season's going to be like
That's the way it
basketball,
should be. Honestly,
and then they're going to do 3 game sets, which
I think that's how it
I
should be.
I think that's great. I think it's
I
good.
agree.
Although I really do miss the wild card games because anything could happen. You could have 3 starters pitch that game. I just love them. I really do.
I mean, and also too as a Giants fan, that we have a long history of wild card games. I mean, most recent or the most notable one would be the Pirates when Bumgarner threw a complete game shutout and Crawford hit a grand slam to right. That was a big moment
Boom.
in Giants history, and I agree. Yeah, the All-Star game definitely. It's just got to be a ceiling. But they don't have a dominant starter that can win a playoff game in my opinion, or a wild card game in my opinion.
All right.
I mean,
And the Giants, the ceiling and the floor. I'm going to go with the floor being that they lose the wild card series. That is the floor. And I think the way this is going, and again, I've always said this, a bullpen doesn't go bad and then get better. If a bullpen starts out good, it could end good, or they get tired and they get worn out and they become bad. If you look at all cylinders, listen, I understand this is still in the middle of a rebuild, but all the pieces are there. The unexpected has been happening, and this could be serious. For the first time in a couple years, without Panda, which I think was, when you think of the dynasty, you think of him being a good piece. I think there's a chance that the Giants, my ceiling, World Series. Ceiling is
And
World Series, and the floor is losing the wild card game, and I think that is very fair to say.
I haven't said it this year because I really don't want to jinx it, and they've been just downright magical all year. It's
If
just the
listen,
comebacks.
tell you what, we won't pull the DeFran. I think I could read your thoughts right now. We could probably just end it on that. Can we do that to make yourself
Yeah,
feel a little bit better?
yeah.
So
Let's end it on.
okay.
I just want to kind of go on a rant on just how absolutely surprised. Like, I'm not necessarily surprised per se. I knew that they made good moves. They were smart with their free agent signings. They were smart with they were just smart, downright smart. And they brought in a bunch of guys that nobody wanted, and this team's just really banded around that like unwanted misfit mindset. And it's awesome because I mean, not even the media is talking about us being a contender. They're still always talking about the Dodgers and the Padres. And let them talk about the Padres. Let them talk about the Dodgers. We'll just keep winning baseball games. And I'm
Yes,
totally okay with that.
Gabe Kepler is finally getting his respect too.
Gabe Kapler had a tough spot because he was replacing the greatest manager in San Francisco Giants history. And he's looking like he could be on the pace to pass him the way it's going. I'm in love with Kapler. I think he's one of the best managers in baseball. He puts guys in positions to succeed. He doesn't let guys go into a position where they're going to fail. And you look back at the Mauricio Dubon sending him down to AAA. It's not like he was playing terrible out there for him. They just expect more from him. And to have that ability to have that tough love to send him down, it's just, I don't know. I just, there's something magical, and it just feels like something's right.
That's just the thing for another time. But yes, there's a lot of times where it's bittersweet send down a prospect. I know that as a Yankee fan because there's been so many prospects that have been blocked because of guys with big contracts. Right. I thought for years, I'm like, hey, Jacoby Ellsbury, look at all the outfielders are holding up because there's Judge, Gardner could platoon with somebody, Ellsbury, Hicks,
Yep, I totally agree with you.
And,
the pain.
Yeah, the pain. By the way, that actually started by a New York radio host named Joe Beningo. He is a longtime Met, Jet, Nick, and Ranger fan. God. And if you go by it, yes, there is a mixture between the Metropolitan and the Empire. In hockey it could switch. With basketball it could switch a little bit, but there's a Yankee, Giant, Nick, Ranger, then there's Met, Jet, Islander. But he has experienced so much pain throughout the years. I will give you a link to some of his work. He's retired now in Florida.
Yeah,
well, every time where me and my father just be like, oh my God, the pain.
Being a Yankee fan isn't too easy right now, but at least you can look back and say you're not a Met fan.
Hey, listen, I'll just say this, right? And I'm not sure if you know this, Maddux, but there is, especially like in the network wise, right? Yankee fans hate me and Chief fans hate me.
Because you're a real one.
Well, the thing is, the Chief fans hate me because I'm not an arrogant asshole. Because if you haven't noticed, everyone's been having 12-inch mentality ever since Andy Reid came to town. No, seriously.
He's got a 12-inch stomach.
Well, seriously, it's like, how dare you argue with one decision over Brett Veach? Jerk off. Guy got 12-inch mentality. When did you buy your jersey? I'll tell you what, I got something hung right here. This is my first Chiefs jersey. This is Priest Holmes. And by the way, you see that right here? This was made by Reebok. Early 2000s. So when somebody says you bought that jersey 5 years ago, go screw yourself. And the Yankee fans, same thing. There's half there's half the time where they want to say 27 wins, even though Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle have been long gone, and Derek Jeter owns the
Weren't
Marlins.
even alive to
Oh,
see it.
I mean, not only that, but Jorge Posada was part of the organization. Andy Pettit's kid got drafted by Jeter. It's like, listen, the regimes are over. It's different times. And then sometimes they'll get shallow-minded. Well, they'll forget somebody's success from a month ago and say he's a bum.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing on how it works. And I will just say this, just as a fan trying to make sense with the other fans. The pain.
Sounds like a good spot to end it.
Yes. Any closing remarks, Maddux?
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was a great conversation. Happy to talk with you.
Absolutely. Braidbridge Sports. This will be an episode on both channels. This was absolutely amazing. And hopefully, come playoff time and after the trade deadline, everything else, we'll do more of these. And we're going to just expand Baybridge together. Pretty soon, we'll be talking basketball free agency. We might be talking some football and even maybe just a little bit of hockey.
Yeah,
Everybody take it easy. Make sure we follow us on my Twitter's down there. Down there, you will be able to find Maddux and Baybridge Sports, and we will see you next time. Take it easy.